is 9 News with Lizzie Pearl.
Good morning. We begin with breaking news. Sydney's lockdown will be extended for at least another week. Mark Burrows joins me in studio now. Mark, what's behind this decision?
Well, very simply, the big issue here is that, the big issue here is that the government wants to decrease mobility. The headline number today, 27 cases, 14 of them partially in isolation or fully in isolation. So many people still out in the community. The Premier said she feels the pain of business, parents who have to undergo this lockdown for another week. It won't expire until Friday midnight next week. Here's what she had to say about this decision to keep going with a lockdown.
The reason why the New South Wales government has taken this position is because we don't want to be in a situation where we are constantly having to move between lockdown, no lockdown, lockdown, no lockdown. What we want to do is give us our best chance of making sure this is the only lockdown we have until the vast majority of our citizens are vaccinated.
With regards to schooling in Sydney, if parents are essential workers, their children can go to school. The Premier also said if Year 12 students have to undergo prac examinations, arrangements will be made for that. A big focus of Kerry Chant and the Premier today was to focus on the areas of Fairfield, Canterbury, Bankstown and Liverpool. This is where the virus is moving in. It's moving into households, and that's why they're trying to double the efforts for people to stay at home and not go out into the community. The Premier has also foreshadowed that in coming days she will give a roadmap to what life will be like in the weeks and months to come in New South Wales. She's not given any indication exactly what that will be, but she's determined that there will be no more lockdowns. You heard her say there she does want to go into this lockdown, no lockdown phase. So what they're planning to do is to put in some long-term plans to give some security, if you like, to businesses and ordinary people in the state who want to get on with their lives. Very interestingly, we have 37 patients in New South Wales now in hospital. 7 people are now in ICU. But what is interesting here is that many people are still young. 14 people under 55, 8 people under 35 are now in hospital. And the health authorities today were at pains to stress that this Delta variant is affecting all age groups and not just the elderly. Lizzie.
Thank you, Mark. Meanwhile, the extended lockdown has affected back-to-school plans. Let's go live to Hayley Francis. Hayley, students will be spending another week at home.
Lizzie, that's right. Well, everything was pointing to this, but obviously having it officially announced makes it really hit home for parents who many are already forced out of the office, working from home, and now they'll have to juggle online learning. Now, of course, the 2-week lockdown here in Sydney coincided with the school holidays. Students were meant to return on Tuesday, but now they will need to be homeschooled for 4 days. Now, there are a few exceptions. As we saw last year, students with parents who are essential workers can return to campus, and Year 12 students who need to carry out practical exams can also return. Now, here's what New South Wales Premier Gladys Berejiklian had to say a short time ago.
We need to stop literally hundreds of thousands of adults moving around and interacting with each other inadvertently as they drop kids off, pick kids up at those usual times. And whilst the virus is more contagious in children, or this strain is, than we've seen previous strains, our main concern is too many people being mobile at the same time and having those interactions.
Now, regional students can return to the back to school as normal. And of course, you've also got to keep in mind how teachers will be affected by this, with little plan to prepare for these online learning modules. It was only a couple of days ago the New South Wales Education Minister Sarah Mitchell ruled out a return to online learning. So a lot of frustration from parents, but many are just hoping that it won't be too much longer before we return to some normality. Lizzie?
Let's hope so. Hayley Francis, thank you. Good news out of Queensland this morning. The state recording only 1 new locally acquired case of Covid-19 in the past 24 hours. That's from more than 16,000 tests. The case is connected to the Alpha variant outbreak, a close contact of 2 known cases in Brisbane South. They've been in home quarantine for the entire infectious period. There are now 49 active cases in Queensland. Restrictions will ease in Victoria from midnight tomorrow. The state government has removed the mask mandate for offices and schools. However, face coverings will still be needed in other indoor settings. Stadiums can now operate at 75% capacity with a cap of 40,000 people outdoors. Victoria has recorded its 7th straight day of no new locally acquired cases. The Treasurer and COVID Task Force Manager are holding talks with business leaders about the next steps in the fight against COVID. Live to Politics reporter Jonathan Kersley in Canberra for us this morning. Jono, what will be the focus of these discussions be?
Lizzie, Josh Frydenberg and Lieutenant General John Fruin have been joined by 30 CEOs and business leaders from Optus, Telstra, Woolworths, Coles, Qantas, Virgin and the big four banks, companies that represent employees of about 7.3 million Australians. They're trying to work out a way to vaccinate employees on site from around about September or October, and in the case of Woolworths, potentially turn some sites into pop-up vaccination clinics, particularly in regional parts of Australia, to try and ramp up this vaccination rollout. The problem is most of this can't be done until later in the year because of supply issues with the vaccine, and business groups have raised concerns over privacy issues of patients and employees, as well as indemnity for companies which may get involved. Labor argues the government is playing catch-up on this and should have organised this meeting last year, but the Treasurer says this is a call to arms.
The role of the business community will be even more important in working with us to ensure the vaccine rollout proceeds smoothly and effectively. This is very much a Team Australia moment. This is another important time for us to come together in the national interest.
At the moment, Lizzie, the plan to reopen Australia hinges on vaccination, but with no targets on how many people need to be jabbed. If you want a comparison, here's this. Crowds at Wembley Stadium just hours ago in the UK, 70,000 people for a football match, largely maskless, huddled together closely in a country where there's 28,000 cases yesterday and 64% of the population fully vaccinated. That country will be reopening more in less than a fortnight.
Jono Kersley in Canberra for us. Well, as we battle the COVID crisis at home, Indonesia is dealing with a massive surge in cases, recording 31,000 new infections and more than 700 deaths. Aid groups are calling for Australia to support our northern neighbour, where it's feared the caseload could reach up to 500,000 a day by next month. US President Joe Biden has vowed to knock on every front door to ensure Americans are getting vaccinated. 160 million people will be fully vaccinated by the end of the week, just a few days short of his July 4 target. COVID deaths in the US are down 90% since January, but health authorities are still monitoring the spread of the Delta variant in areas with low vaccination rates. Fully vaccinated people in the UK will not have to self-isolate from next month, even if they're found to be a close contact of a positive COVID case. The Health Secretary says the success of the vaccine program means they can ease rules for people who have had both jabs. Stupid and unexplainable. That's how sacked Dragons star Paul Vaughan has described his actions after breaching COVID restrictions by hosting a party with teammates during the lockdown on the weekend. The forward broke his silence last night to apologise after having his contract torn up by the club.
It was a very, very bad judgment call on my behalf, and it was obviously very stupid, and I'm deeply remorseful and sorry for what's happened.
The NRL slapped the 13 players involved with fines totalling $305,000 as well as match suspensions. Lucky to escape, a family watch on as their Gold Coast home burns. What fueled the flames that couldn't be stopped all night? How dogs and a delivery man saved a family from this explosion. And see how the cutest little troopers prepare for combat.